I think we have to watch this.
Good evening. All right, thanks. Welcome to everyone who is here in person and those of you who are watching. This is our first class in what's called mindful aging, and I'll talk a little bit about what I propose to explore with you during these 6 weeks. But this is principally a meditation class. We're going to explore the topic of aging through the lens of mindfulness. So every evening we will start out with a guided meditation. You can take notes if you like, but don't go overboard on the notes. I have a handout at the end of each class that kind of summarizes a lot of the stuff I'll talk about. So, mindfulness, that's the kind of meditation we're going to be using. There's a lot of different kinds of meditation. There's Baden, come in.
I'm sorry.
We just got started, so you're not very late.
I thought I was 25 minutes early.
No, it's 6 o'clock, not 6:30. So mindfulness means learning to pay attention, basically. Paying attention to what's happening in our mind, principally, the thoughts that are going by, but also paying attention to our body and to what's happening around us. Learning to pay attention with a certain kind of attitude, an attitude of curiosity, like, oh, that happened. Oh, amazing, I never realized that. And kindness. We're kind of looking at it, and this is not all that easy, although it's simple, because usually we kind of go through our lives sort of half on autopilot. We do things automatically, right? We're so used to them, which comes in handy, but we miss a lot. And mindfulness meditation teaches us to kind of step back and notice what's happening. Doing this allows us to be calm, for one thing. That's the biggest thing that people talk about. I feel relaxed and calm, not like I'm on a hamster wheel going and going all the time. It also kind of gives us insight. We can step back and we kind of notice things about ourselves and our world that we didn't see. And one of the big things the prisoners that I teach mention is that we notice our triggers. When something happens that irritates us, we usually have some automatic responses that are sometimes not helpful. We yell, we say, don't do that, or we strike out in some way, or we do something that's not wise. I do this all the time, so it's something we gradually learn. We learn to step back and we notice our habits, and we can act more wisely. So every night we will start off with a guided meditation teaching mindfulness. So if you've been meditating a long time, if you've taken some of the classes we've done before, or if you've never meditated, it's okay, because we're going to just do this together as well as we can, okay? A bell is kind of a traditional way to start and end a meditation session, so that's what I have here. It's helpful to have a certain kind of posture for meditation. You know, you often see yogis sitting on a mat with their legs crossed, which is a great position, but most of us at this age can't sit that way. I can't do it anymore. But it is helpful to try to sit upright. You can lean back if your back needs that, but it's really helpful to just have a relatively straight back, not rigid, and feel your feet flat on the floor, and feel your hands in your lap. Just a position where we call it a dignified posture. One that helps you remain alert and relaxed at the same time. So try to find your dignified posture and we'll begin, and I'll lead you through this. Sitting here, we can have our eyes open, kind of gazing down toward the middle, or we can close our eyes if we feel comfortable. Just sitting here in a place where we can sit without moving for 5 or 10 minutes. And we notice our feet on the floor, feeling them stable, flat on the floor. We notice our hands resting. We feel the contact of our hands with our legs. We notice the weight of our body in the chair. Just feeling these sensations, noting them, concentrating on the feeling of the body right now. We notice our back, not stiff, but upright, supporting our body. Notice our shoulders and notice if there's any tension in the neck or shoulders, just let them drop. Noticing our jaw and our face. If there's tension there, try to let that relax. Now we bring attention to the feeling of our breath. Where do you feel your breath in and out? Maybe in the nostrils as the air goes in and out. Maybe in the chest as it expands and contracts. Maybe in the belly. With the in-breath, it goes out. With the out-breath, it comes back in. Just noticing each in-breath and each out-breath, wherever you notice it best. Not trying to change the breath, just breathing naturally and noticing what it feels like to breathe. In and out. Sometimes it's helpful to say to yourself gently, in, out. Or rising, falling. Nothing to do right now, but notice the feeling of each breath. But pretty soon, sooner or later, something takes our attention away from the breath. We notice sounds. Oh. Hearing. Maybe say to yourself, oh, I hear something. And then let go of that and bring your attention back to the next breath. thoughts come by. Maybe memories of what you were doing before this, or wondering what we're going to do next, or plans for the rest of the evening or the week, or many other different kinds of thoughts that just pop up. Where do they come from? They just pop up. Notice, oh, I'm thinking. That's okay, that's normal, but right now we're just going to let go of that thought and come back to the breath. The breath is our anchor. It just brings us back to a steady place from which to see all the other things that are going on. Maybe we notice some discomfort in our body, and we say, oh, I feel that. Maybe there's an itch, and I can put up with that itch for now. I'm just going to let that go and come back to the feeling of the breath. As many times as our mind wanders, we just keep noticing it, letting go, and coming back to the breath. Just sitting and breathing. Nothing else to do right now. And we can move a little bit. Notice the room. Notice what we feel like. So sitting and noticing the breath is our core baseline meditation that we will do each week. And there's a lot of other practices we'll explore. But we'll always do this. So it is wonderful if you can do this on a regular basis at home. Spend some time every day. Set aside some time for yourself where I'm just going to sit and do this practice. Or if you have another practice that works for you, this is the one that I use and I'll be talking about. We'll talk about some other ones too.
Do you prefer sitting over laying?
Lying down is a wonderful way to do it. Problem is we tend to fall asleep then. And the objective is to be alert. But it is a great practice to do if you need to fall asleep. You can do it standing. You can do it walking. But the baseline practice is sitting. Good question. Any other questions? So, we're going to explore aging from the perspective of mindfulness. as I mentioned, each evening we'll start off with a guided meditation like this. I'll do some talking. We'll do some writing. We'll do some other kinds of guided meditation. We'll have times for discussion. We'll close each evening. I anticipate it may take about 2 hours each evening. So about halfway through, we'll have a short break. At the end, we'll have a short meditation, and each evening, I anticipate having a handout with you that summarizes some of the things that went into this evening, and some extra things about stuff that I've been reading, so appreciate you with this. We'll do some introductions. We'll go around this circle, and I'd like each of us to say our name and a little bit about what brought you here. Why are you here? So I'll start with myself. I'm Michael. About 8 years ago or so, I was wondering what I was going to do in retirement. And it came to me. I could teach meditation. I've been practicing meditation for 40 years or so, off and on, and I realized this is a way I can help people and help myself. So I started studying, reading, took more classes on it, went to some retreats, and so I've been teaching mindfulness meditation in Kiel and Chilton in the fall and spring for about the last 5 or 6 years. And also at a couple of prisons in the area. I go to Kettle Moraine Prison 3 times a month, and we've got a group there of men who are studying it. So I enjoy doing this, and I thank having you all here. So that's part of my story. Why don't we start with Jim? Say your name and what brought you here this evening?
I'm Jim Bray. I'm from Chilton. I've been meditating now for about 3 years and have a daily practice, and I enjoy it. I go with Michael to Kettle Moraine for the prison initiative. I think what really brought me here was how helpful the meditation has been since my wife passed away and when she was ill. And it's not something that happens suddenly, but in many ways it has made my life more mindful. And I have incorporated it into a lot of different parts of my life. I've taken a variety of these classes, and I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad this topic was the source for Michael's latest.
I'm Kate, and I took the basic mindfulness meditation class in spring, and I try to practice meditation probably 5 days out of the week for sure, and just felt that this would be a good extension to what I learned this spring.
My name's Faden, and again, I apologize for interrupting. Please, I'll be on time next week. I'll be mindful. I began meditating in the 70s, and I probably meditated for 7 years till and 2 times a day is my practice, and I still do that. I didn't do it. There were some years in the middle between working and family, and I just couldn't get up early enough, and when I got home I had to do meals or something, so probably when I needed it the most was when I couldn't do it. But as soon as my family kind of settled down and I could get up, so I'm trying to think. Of late I've probably been meditating probably close to 20 years recently. And I just find great peace with it. And as I've changed my practice over, it used to be transcendental meditation, that's how I did it. And then I took Michael's class the first time he went around, and I found other ways. And I found other benefits. And so it is kind of a evolving, changing practice for me. But it's become spiritual. I just really feel the presence of another spirit when I meditate. Unless my mind's too crazy, and then that doesn't happen.
I'm Deb, and I'm from Chilton. I saw this class advertised at the library, and I've never done meditation at all. Prayer, I pray, but not meditation. And so it just intrigued me, and I thought, coupled with the concept of mindful aging, I thought it would be a good thing to check out and to try.
I'm Chuck. Deb told me about this class. She's my wife. I have not meditated. Maybe back when I was 20 or something. Let's see. The reason I'm here is because there's something to learn, I believe, and I am aging.
I'm Kim from Stockbridge. About 5 years ago, I got really extremely burnt out from working a lot of hours and really hard to an unhealthy point where my mind was just always racing, couldn't sleep. So I started meditating, and that helped a lot. And then I went to Michael's class and learned a bit more and was meditating more often, and it really does bring you a lot of peace and slows you down. And I did that for a while. I kind of fell off the wagon. So then when I saw this class, I wanted to sign up to get back into it, and also my mind is starting to race a lot, so I knew it would calm me down quite a bit. And the topic I really liked was kind of get to know your true self, where I think everybody's conditioned by past experiences and past people, and kind of was always a people pleaser, so I just think it'd be good to dive in to know more of my true self.
My name is Marie. I have never meditated before. I've done other things, but over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of changes in my life, and my mind is always going, and I need to be able to focus and get it calmed down a little more. So we'll see if it helps.
My name is Karen, and I think the reason I found the article interesting is because we're aging. Every time I look at the Weeding website, I see people closer and closer to my age. And then, even if I don't know the people well, it just sits there for days. And it's like, I can't believe they're gone. When is it my turn? And I just can't get off that path. And I mean, it's good to realize it, but you can't hang there, and I am.
I'm Grace, I'm from Chilton. This class pricked my interest because I can't quiet my mind down. If I want to find peace and solve something or have some quiet time, I do a lot of sewing. And so I'll do that. But I need to figure out my quiet. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to meditate. I can't keep it quiet.
I'm Chris from Metropolis of Calumettville. For one thing, my doctor's been after me to do meditation to lower blood pressure. And I guess I'm just looking for inner peace.
I'm Andy. I live just outside of Chilton. I So my old doctor was put this on, so I wanted to come visit him. And that mindful aging seems like something I could use. I had a brain injury and I'm still wrapped up with that, so I thought anything that will help would be good.
I'm glad you're here, Andy.
And I'm Linda, I'm Andy's mom, and I've done meditation a few times through the years, but didn't stick with it. Although when I am agitated feeling, I will sit quietly, but not on a regular basis. So I'm glad too to get back into that. He's aging, I'm old.
I'm Sue from Kiel, and I took one of Mike's classes previously in mindfulness, and it was helpful, but I think like someone else said, when you need it the most, you didn't have that time to do it. I was working for 50 hours a week, and I just, so I didn't get as much benefit out of it as I would have hoped to. So now that I'm retired, hopefully I'll have more time. I do use it sometimes at night if I can't sleep. I do, and that it does, so I know that it really helps, because if I could just concentrate on my breath and quiet my mind down. Cause too, I thought I'm retired, I shouldn't have no stress, my mind should be, and I'm finding that's not the case. My mind is racing and I'm just stressed in a different way, so I'm looking forward to getting back on the wagon.
I'm Joan, and I've probably been meditating for maybe close to 30 years. So I do totally believe in all the benefits of meditation. And I kind of looked at this mindful aging from a totally different perspective because I want to mindfully age. I already know about the meditation part, but I think I can improve on mindfully aging. So that's why I'm here. So we'll see what happens.
Very good. I'm pleased that many of you have been meditating and try to do it regularly. And some of the things you mentioned, you are meditating already. Prayer, sewing, sitting quietly, those are meditation practices, so that's good. So this class came about because Baden said, Michael, you've been teaching this same meditation class for years now. When are you going to teach an advanced meditation class? And I said, well, there's no advanced. It's all just the same. We just, it's worthwhile going over it. But the more I thought about it, and my girlfriend Barb said, maybe you should look closer at that. And so I was reading and thinking, and so for the past year, I have been exploring this, and I decided to explore getting old. And it's been wonderful, productive for me, and so I wanted to share some of this. So I hope that you have received in your email this kind of a summary of the class. If you didn't, I've got a few copies I can give out at the end of the class. And in that, it had kind of what we plan to do. So tonight, we're gonna kind of explore aging itself and meditation. The next couple of weeks are about connectedness, about other people. Then the number 4 is about sources of inspiration. Number 5 is about grief and dying, and I'm putting that together right now, and that's really worthwhile. I hope that's helpful. And the last one, gratitude, is really important, and then we'll kind of summarize what we've been doing. So I was studying about this, and I came across this book by Richard Rohr, who is a Catholic writer, called Falling Upward. I love that title, Falling Upward. And he talks about the two halves of life. And the first half is where we kind of are establishing who we are as a person. We may find a partner. We figure out how we're gonna make a living. We may have children, and we've got all that part of our life that is about these certain roles that we have to do. And a lot of you have talked about that, how that is such a important part that we don't have time for anything else. And then there comes a certain time when we have an opportunity to go beyond that. So then I started reading more, and so there's this book, and the course doesn't exactly come from this book, but I've suggested it. It's a good read, it's easy, and he has a lot of very good practices that I'll sometimes mention. It's called Aging as a Spiritual Practice. He's a Buddhist, and a lot of the stuff that we have is from Buddhism, but it's really not exactly a religious practice, but it is spiritual, okay? So I'll draw a lot of things from Christian practice, which is, I'm a Christian, I'm kind of a Buddhist too, so both. But don't let that get in the way when he talks about Buddhist stuff, because he's very good, very good. And then I have the other books that I'll be referring to once in a while, and if you want to do a lot of extra reading, you've got that reading list, either during the class or when we're done to read, because reading kind of helps. So we're going to explore aging, and before I talk too much about it, I thought it would be a good idea for us to do a little activity. This is one I learned in Madison this summer. Years ago, a few years back, I took a class called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction class, which is in Madison. It might be at a few other universities around the area. I think Stevens Point has it, I just noticed. It was started by John Kabat-Zinn, a wonderful teacher about 40 years ago in Massachusetts, and it's an 8-week intensive meditation class. So I took that a few years ago in Madison. And this summer, they had a class in Madison, once a week for 6 weeks, mindful aging. What do you know? So I took that class. So I learned a few things from that we can use. So for this activity, you'll need your writing instrument and something to write on, and I'm going to give you a piece of blank paper. There's some pens and a tablet over there if you need something. I guess I could have done this another way. Next time, I'll pass them out. You can pass them around.
Oh, here, there's quite a few here. Oh, thank you.
Okay,
Might be a
everybody
good
have one?
Yeah. Oh, no.
So there's a lot of different attitudes we have about aging. And I would like you to write the word aging, A-G-I-N-G, in the middle of your paper.
Oops.
And we're gonna take 5 or 10 minutes for you to just think about this word and what comes up in your mind associated with aging. What does it mean to you? What do you think of when you think of that word? And just write it all around on this piece of paper. Okay? Whatever comes to mind with aging, and just let the words flow. Just write little words around this. We can finish up. Then I want you to look at the words that you wrote down and circle a couple items, anything that surprised you or anything that stands out in what you associate with getting older. Circle a couple. Sometimes when we pre-associate with this, something pops up that we didn't even think of before. would some of you like to share what came up for you? It can be really helpful to talk about our shared
Sure.
experiences.
One of the
Great.
things is disconnect from family. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean my children or grandchildren, but it could be the siblings and even friends sometimes. That was one thing, kind of lose connection once in a while. And then I kind of had a contradiction here. I have responsibility and independence.
Mm-hmm,
And it kind of contradict each other, but they're there.
yeah, good.
So.
Thank you.
For me, I was real involved, and now all of a sudden, it's like I'm a nobody, kinda, you know, I'm not a nobody, but, you know, you just feel like
Yeah,
you're a has-been.
yeah.
You're not a part of a team. That's how I felt when I retired. I felt like I wasn't a part of a team anymore. You know, like at work you have your coworkers, you're all working towards a similar goal, or, you know, and that's kind of how I felt.
Lose your identification kind of.
Right.
And I have freedom from being employed.
I put more free time to
I use the word thrilled. I love the jobs that I had, but it's still wonderful just to plan your own days.
I circled 3. And one of them is readiness. And then I said, readiness for what? Up higher, I had put, I didn't circle this one, but was loss of strength and loss of hearing. Those came back, I mean, I knew what the loss was, but I don't know what the readiness is for, Michael. It's there.
The next
Whatever
adventure.
comes next.
Just readiness, I think I'm ready. And the other 2 kind of go together. One was knowing. Just, I think as you get older, you kind of have a way of knowing things.
Wisdom.
Yeah, that, you know, used to not make sense. And then this one warmed my heart, crone. I've been very fortunate to have a mentor helping me get old, and she has now passed. But she talked about being a crone, and I was her mentee, you know, and she was the crone, and I thought, you know, I guess I'm becoming, sorry guys, I don't know what the male equivalent is, but, and that feels comfortable, although I don't know who I'm sharing anything with. That feels comfortable.
That's good. A lot, I don't know if people are familiar with that word crone. You know, it kind of has a negative connotation. We think of it as a witch or somebody who's ugly and old. But what does it really mean? Someone, a wise woman.
A wise woman sharing the wisdom and mentoring other people
I love it.
to become wise. Yeah. I kind of forgot about the negative side of that word because she used that regularly and said, yeah, Peyton, I'm a crone.
Good.
She helped me understand Buddhism a little bit. She was just a wonderful friend, and I miss her terribly.
How fortunate for you.
I also had freedom, thinking of retirement, because you're always working so hard. And then kind of what surprised me, thinking about after retirement, was finding purpose or having purpose. And then another thing that surprised me is worry about getting sick, because it just seems like everybody's getting cancer or something nowadays, so it's,
I think circled 4 different things, but the one that surprises me the most, that it's marginalized. And it's becoming aware of, you spend a lot of time, at least in life, learning what your prejudices are and whether they're good or not and changing them. And all of a sudden, you find yourself being one of those marginalized people who, there's a lot of prejudice against the aged. So, that's one thing.
looking forward to aging, cause in a weird way, it's like, okay, what's next? I'm kind of excited about the next thing. I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I'm also concerned, cause I've never had a physical limitation. And I don't know how I'll handle that. If I'll do it with grace or anger or impatience or what that might look like. I guess I'll find out, maybe.
And it may not happen for a long, long time.
True.
I'm almost 75, I still hike the kettles. My girlfriend and I did like 300 miles,
That's awesome.
more than that.
That's
in
another
one
thing, the
season.
challenge to stay physically active, I think, is there. Because my husband will not hike with me, I take my dogs, but I don't always wanna go alone in a new place,
Right.
so it's a challenge.
Yeah, I wrote down disability too, because sooner or later, as we age, we're all gonna face some
Yeah, you never know.
kind of disability,
Mhm.
whether it be your eyes or your hearing or your hip or whatever it is, and just, thinking about that is, you know, I never thought about that as I was healthy and living my life. And, you know, now I realize that there are more things like that happening. But then along with that, I wrote down kindness, because I see more kindness all around me, and I feel more importance based on being kind to people. It wasn't a big something that I looked for or, you know, saw it as so important when I was younger, but now it's like almost the basis of everything I do, you know, is this kind, this good.
Do you feel like it's fun to think of kind things to do for
Yeah,
others?
yeah.
Yeah,
I do, it's
We-
just
yeah.
how I
Andy's that way
naturally
too.
think these days as I'm older, I guess because I recognize it more in others being kind to me. Maybe because there's more time.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
You have time to think about it. What about reliance on others, like when we can't drive anymore? Loss of independence, that's a tough one. My mother-in-law is no longer driving and she hates it.
In more rural, small town
Yeah.
areas makes it a little trickier.
Right. So, yeah, planning for the future when we can't live independently anymore. I'm not quite there yet,
I wrote down time,
Right, Doc?
because I experienced when I retired, the concept of now I've got all these hours in front of me and I'm not working. And now I gotta figure out what to do. When I worked, I didn't have to figure anything out when I got up in the morning. I went, sat down at my desk, did my thing, and from this time to this time, and it was all laid out. And all of a sudden now it's like, what do you wanna do? That's very, to me, a very difficult thing. It's, I don't know, I don't wanna do anything.
My body tells me I'm 73, but my mind tells me I'm 40 or 50.
Yeah. I think that's your spirit telling you that. Cause I don't think the spirit ages, only your physical body ages. That's my personal belief.
I wrote down the opportunity to teach in new ways, new things to new people. I've always considered myself a teacher, and I've taught many different things to many different people, many different kinds of students. And I missed it when I couldn't do it. I was an administrator for a while, but all of a sudden I could re-enter that teaching world in many different ways, new ways. And that popped into my head the first thing. And another one, and this is kind of an opportunity too, the ability to reassess and renew my spirituality.
Very good. Couple of things that I kind of discerned from what you're all saying. One is the fact that change is what's happening. Change of getting older, change in retirement, all these changes, and change can be hard, but it can be good too. So learning how to deal with change is a big part of our practices. Noticing what's going on and learning from it, I guess. And the other thing is about contradiction in the change. We have all these limitations that we talked about. Physically, mentally, and on the other side, opportunity. The two opposites can be true at the same time. Interesting to explore that too, you know? I think part of what we explore in mindfulness is not having answers, is just having questions. And staying with the question, just lingering on what is this? What is this about aging? What is this in this moment? And sometimes answers come, and a lot of times they come when you haven't even been trying. You've all had the experience where there was a certain problem that you were trying to figure out, and you thought and couldn't solve it, and often you would go to sleep, and in the morning you would have the answer, right? Or you pray about it, and you just say, I'm gonna forget about that, and it'll come to me, and so often it does. So there's like this spirit, if you wanna call it that, this deeper part of ourselves that can come up when we allow it to. So, very good. So those are some of the things we're going to explore about aging. And I've got some other stuff for you this evening, but we're going to take about a 5-minute break. So about 5 after 7, we'll come back here. There's bathrooms are just this way down the hall. And you can talk and walk or anything, and I'll ring the bell in 5 minutes to come back, okay?
Kate, in the last class I was in with you was Home Alone with Katrina.
Oh, I thought we took it in.
That's a long time ago, wasn't it?
It's on Menlo Park, California. That's a nice place, but it's too far. I'll get up there as much as I could, but I got 8 grandchildren, so they were almost getting ready for college.
Well, that's the problem, I'm gonna be gone.
still out
December.
there.
I'm thinking, oh, I can't get from
They're still putting the.
because 3 weeks is the most you can get. One of these on hold.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
what it is.
Yeah, I guess it'd be fun.
But if there's a waiting list, you can't, so. Oh. Don't tell me that.
Yeah, Gabrielle's the youngest, and then Ray, and then Katrine was the oldest.
My daughter lives in Dallas.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, they do it in children. Children's schools, that sort of thing.
It will.
Michael delivered Ray.
Yeah, Beach Beach.
I used to get a crow.
A
mentor on aging, that would be awesome.
Right, so you have to go, although I do know people that were going to Disney World, but that's in the States. There's no problem, they decide. It's just-
You understand.
Really?
I did.
And it's got like shoots on it.
That'd be interesting.
Years, just because it's like small, it feels so small town, that you can work anywhere, and it's just so beautiful.
It'll be interesting to see how we used to camp outside of Panama City at St. Andrews. And she didn't change it.
Kept her going.
There, so you'll see a lot.
They did their watch.
You said you were hiked,
There's somebody who, yeah, the family was okay with that, but there was some kids, so they had to leave within 5 to 7 days.
Sure. I have a girlfriend who wants to hike Iceland, right now she can't start because her husband so she keeps saying, you wanna do those things, you wanna do that, I said, I don't know what it all is.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Where the
That can happen no matter what age you are. It's just good practice to get into it, I think.
Well,
Can I assume there must be trail maps on here?
Chuck did that, but I haven't seen you for a while. I had some serious health problems. The most recent was my heart. The doctor says no stress, so you know what that means.
Okay, figure that one
And see what yours.
And hand surgery, I got problems with my hands, with the ligaments. It's not carpal tunnel, but it's something that took occupational therapy and cortisone injections and had some surgery to fix. That happened today.
I just take my dog.
They messed up the IV, so that's what's wrong with this time. So I've got other candidates. Like they drove me here, we take them home, so I don't have to drive. I'm doing okay.
Is it like a trigger finger?
It is like that, yes, but it locks, and it'll stay locked for sometimes a day and a half.
Oh, really?
Really bad. And then when it unlocks, or if it unlocks inadvertently, like hit it or something like that, very painful. And then the pain lasts for a long time, so I've been struggling with this for a long time.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
that's
this one has it too, so this one is next. This one is not as severe, and my shoulder needs fixing too. And then maybe I'm done, I don't know. I didn't circle health on my thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a given, you know.
Hey, you know, do we have a teacher, or, you know,
Yeah, that's fun. I got that on the list too. Adventures with the grandkids, that's so much fun.
Yeah.
They look like
They're having a good time. They have a lot of like interests and they're all curious, you know, and they like adventure and, you know, a certain amount of, you know, uncertainty, like where are we gonna go? What sea, you know, that kind of thing. Or play pirates
They
or
don't
play
know.
spies or all this crazy stuff. We do a lot of hiking and caving, you know, I haven't caved for a while, but you know, where I actually actively caved, for the Ledgeview candlelight thing, I sat down in front of the traffic.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a good place to meditate, you know, I counted for 6 hours, so.
You climb down the ladder and then these kids, it was really a fun trip.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can be
Fun and free.
Very good, thank you, very good. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about this second half of life concept. So we talked about aging and how there are opportunities here. And that's the main thing I'd like, I guess, while we keep looking at the unpleasant things and not avoiding them. So that's part of meditation is it's relaxing, but it's also about not being shy to look directly at uncomfortable feelings. So in this second half of life, part of it is, well, there have been a lot of different authors and psychologists and spiritual thinkers who've talked about this. Like I said, I encountered it in this book by Richard Rohr, but then I found some other places. For instance, Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist from like in the 20s or 30s, talked about this, about how in the second half of life, when we don't have to do all those things we did in the first half, we have an opportunity to look at ourselves and really explore inside. His view was trying to see our unconscious, which was in dreams a lot. And a lot of other psychologists have said about exploring the second half of life. And part of it is looking at what roles we've been put into or put ourselves into over our life and taking a look at those and letting go of them. Which is, we've talked about how this is hard because we identify ourselves with these roles. We've been rewarded by being parents and by working all these years, and it feels good. And so as we give those up, what's left? Well, there's a lot left, and that's what we can explore. But how do we find that? Richard Rohr said, it's when we pay attention and seek integrity that we move from the first to the second half. Integrity largely has to do with purifying our intentions and a growing honesty about our actual motives. Now, to really do this, a lot of us have to be kind of pushed into it. Something happens very often that just changes our world. It could be, very often is something painful like the death of a spouse or a child, or one's own illness, a heart attack, financial problems, loss of a job. Suddenly you're left groundless, and you're left in this place where what's next? And very often when those things happen, it's an as you get through it, you look back on it months later and you say, how lucky that happened to me, because now I see life so differently. Or it could be something positive, you know, having children, or having a new job, or having a good retirement. is a change, and all of a sudden you're left with, what now? What now? So, and in this book, Lewis Richmond calls it lightning strikes, which is a good way to put it. And many of us have had those, and to look back at those and say, oh, that wasn't easy, but it's pushing me somewhere. And a lot of you said you have this desire to go on, to know what's next. Falling upward, he says, requires faith. You have to have some faith that the good is going to happen, that I'm going to learn from this. One of the authors that I used a lot is this author Pema Chodron, who is a Buddhist nun in the Tibetan tradition. So it's, you know, something we're totally unfamiliar with, but she's so down to earth that what she says is good for everyone. So some of the books I've referred to are by her. She says that we need to begin with a broken heart. There's another teacher, Joseph Goldstein, who says, don't waste your suffering. We all suffer, and we usually try to avoid suffering, of course, but it comes, and if we can be with it and notice what's going on, very often we can move on to a place of wisdom, strength. Another part of this process that I have been thinking about is this idea of being a mentor. Elderhood, it's called sometimes. So this is really common in traditional societies like Native Americans, that the old people, they are respected for their wisdom. They tell stories. So they can't hunt or do jobs anymore. Maybe they're blind and crippled, but they have something to offer to the community. And I think we all do as we get older. So how do we develop that? I think that's worth looking at.
And how do you find the community?
There you go.
Because we're not a community-minded society anymore.
That has changed so much. You're right. All right. So part of this, as I mentioned, is about looking at the roles we've had in life, seeing what's meaningful, what has been meaningful, what is still meaningful, and maybe what is no longer meaningful. So I'd like you to try just a little guided contemplation about this. This is not writing, it's just sitting and thinking, okay? And seeing what comes up. And this is a meditation I've done with the men at prison that they find worthwhile, and I think it's good for all of us, but especially in this context, and it's called Who Am I? So I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, who am I? And every now and then I'm going to ring the bell and I'm going to say, ask that again. Who am I? Because maybe you can go to deeper layers. Maybe you can find these roles that define you. I'm a man. I'm a woman. I live in central Wisconsin. I'm a parent, or whatever. All right? So find a posture where you can sit calmly. And I'll ring the bell every now and then and I'll ask the question again and just let that kind of percolate, okay? Who am I? 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 Thank you. Well, let's go around the room, start with Joan, and just mention anything interesting that came up. Maybe nothing.
It's weird. I just kept coming up with, I am, and that's enough. That's it.
I came up with lots of things, but nothing profound. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandma, a hiker, a scrapbooker, a reader, a gardener. Lots of concrete things, but nothing profound, I guess.
It's okay, good.
I
I don't think appreciator is maybe a word. I appreciate nature, just the sunset, the dew on the leaf, that sort of thing. I appreciate those things that are just there. You don't have to buy them. They're just there if you open your eyes.
Couple good ones I came up with. They're thoughtful and family oriented.
I don't know who I am. You know, you've got this, what other people think you are, and I don't know.
Okay, the first thing that came to my mind was I asked my little 4-year-old grandson who he was. He walked in the door and I said, "Who is it?" He said, "I'm me." And that kept coming to mind when I was, who am I? I'm me. You know, kind of like what, you know, just, I'm a lot of things too, but that kept coming back. I'm me. Cool.
I'm a mentor. Not by choice, but I am.
I'm lost.
I had the same thing of, I don't know who I am, and then also I'm stuck because I'm tired of the profession I'm in, but I'm not sure where I wanna go next. And I've been there, stuck for a while, so.
I don't know, I was thinking, you know, the obvious things that go down the list, you know, husband, father, grandfather. And what I kept coming up with was to be determined.
I came up with I'm a child of God and I'm a seeker of knowledge and truth. Yeah.
That's exactly what I came up with, Deb. And I was feeling uncomfortable saying I'm a child of God out loud. And I too, every time the bell rang, I came up with child of God. And then I'd come up with one or two more. But then as you did it more often, I had to think a little deeper, and that's when I came up with seeker, sojourner, traveler in this life. That's the readiness that I talked about. I don't know where I'm going, but I hope it's exciting. It's scary.
I had the traditional ones where sister, daughter, mother, grandmother. But then as you were ringing the bell, I was thinking of the things that I've accomplished in my life and the schooling that I've done and the work that I've done, and I thought that was all very meaningful and helpful, and I think that'll be good for me in my second half of life.
Well, since my wife passed away, you know, having been a husband and enjoyed being a husband and enjoyed being a parent and father, and now grandfather, comes through very, very strongly, particularly the role of grandfather has changed since she passed. And I guess it's become more of an active thing for me and more of a solo thing, because we always did just about everything together, including our parenting and grandparenting. And then teacher comes to mind, because a lot of my parenting was teaching in many ways, even very informally. And that's very active with my grandchildren now. I enjoy to teach them new things, and I relish what they can teach me about myself and about their world. And I think that's about it.
So in order to become mentors, to have some wisdom to pass on, part of the process is learning who we are. So that's, you know, keep doing this, keep asking, who am I? And at these times when we're stuck, lost, just journeying, go with that, because have faith that something is coming, I think, is helpful. Couple of things that I've been exploring, talking about parenting, that's been certainly big in my life, and being a husband, and the change that's come. I'm letting my children and grandchildren live their own lives now and not running them anymore. That's kind of hard. You know, they depended on me, now they don't. But it's good too. And of course, other roles, like having been a doctor, you know, that defined who I was, and people still call me Doc. And so, my friend Barb asked me, what will it be like when no one knows who you are? So I keep exploring that, because more and more people don't, you know, remember that or didn't know me in that respect, and that's okay. So kind of going beyond those roles and seeing what's next is fascinating, I think.
So when you let go of them, did their relationship with you change?
Yes, I think they're a little angry because I'm saying, yep, you do it yourself now. And they don't exactly say this, but I can tell, what, you're not gonna take care of me anymore? You're not gonna pay for my rent?
Or you have all this time, why don't you do it, kind of thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah. And this is totally normal in a family system, that when something changes, there's gonna be backlash, right? It's not easy, but I've been going to a therapist now and then and talking about my family situation, and she says, you know, when a family goes through a big change, it takes 3 to 7 years for the family to adjust. So be patient.
Yeah, right.
That was helpful. Very good. I'm really appreciating your exploring these things and talking about them. I've got another little thing that came from this book that I just did this morning, and I found it really helpful for myself. And this is about elderhood, and this requires some writing. So if you need some paper, I'll give you one. Otherwise, just use your own paper. So one of the things that I was thinking about with this class is, as we get older, one of the things I look for is how to be a mentor, how to be able to give good advice, guidance, leadership to my children or other people around me. And one thing that Lewis found valuable, and I think looking at for myself I found valuable, is looking at the examples we've had. So make a list of your childhood elders. Write down their names, people who guided you in some way, who taught you. Very often it's not our parents, but it could be. Somebody who you look back and you said, yeah, I learned from them. Write down their names if you can, and then just write a word or two to describe their gift to you.
What's the range considered your childhood?
It's up to you.
Okay.
Okay, let's finish up. I'm gonna start this time. I did this morning, so I came up with 4 different people. And I did include my grandfather and my father. My grandfather, Henry, hard work is what he taught me because he had us as kids out hoeing beans in the fields. My father, Hugo, taught me calm perseverance. My piano teacher, Mr. Koshi, taught me patience and practice. And my pediatrician, Dr. Heavenrich, taught me caring. And I'm just gonna tell a brief story about Dr. Heavenrich. He was my doctor, and then he was the doctor to some of my children. But I remember him best. He was a doctor for my baby sister, Heidi, who had Down syndrome and a heart issue. And I remember him coming to our house the night she died, and talking with my mother. And looking back on that years later, I'm sure that's part of why I became a doctor. What stories would you like to share of elders in your life?
I'll go. I wrote, one of them I wrote down was my grandpa, which would have been my dad's dad. He always had a way, I always respected him, you always behaved around him, but I never feared him. And I don't know, he just had a way about him that you just knew you had to, and we had fun, it wasn't like it was very disciplined, but you went in the store, you knew you were supposed to behave in the store, and you didn't, but I never feared him, so I just thought that was interesting that he could demand that kind of respect without fear and still have fun and, enjoy being with him.
I'm gonna go with my father and my older brother. They both seem to know much more than me than mechanical stuff.
They taught you mechanics.
And they taught me everything.
Good.
I would say it was my mom who taught me kind of a steadiness of love. I remember, even though she had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things that happened in her life that people would probably say, oh, steadiness. But I remember being a kid and I would come downstairs in the morning and she would be sitting there in her house coat, because back then people wore house coats. And she would be eating her toast and drinking her coffee. And then when I got up, she would greet me and get up and make me some eggs and we'd have breakfast together, and that was just home for me. That steadiness of her always being there.
Two of them of mine, surprisingly enough, are nuns that I had in grade school. Sister Antonina I had her for 2 years because I had her for 4th and 5th grade. And she loved nature, she loved science, she loved history. And I would always be the kid that would help her clean up the classroom and stuff like that. When I went fishing, I'd give some of the fish I caught to the convent, and she was always the one that would welcome that kind of gift so well. She even went canoeing with us with one of the other nuns in our big 18.5-foot canoe in Lake Michigan. And we lived to tell the tale. And then there was Sister Natalia, and she gave me a love of literature, and she was a very spiritual person, but not in the usual Catholic dogmatic way, which kind of set her apart for sure. And she always encouraged us to explore in a philosophical way our own personal spirituality, which is very, very not found in the Catholic Church very much. A little bit later in life, Nick Johnson was my boss, and I worked in a movie theater, and I was an usher, and I was projectionist and assistant manager and theater technician, all kinds of things. And he was a very good boss, and one thing he taught me, I got involved after high school in a apprenticeship program to be an electrician. And my parents thought it was a good idea to be in a trade. And I hated it because the electrician that I was working with, all he did was fix automatic pin spotters in bowling alleys. And that was very, very boring. So I was complaining to Nick Johnson about this day job that I had. I worked for him in the evening. He says, well, it's not very smart to be doing an apprenticeship for something you hate. He says, you're smart enough to go to college. That's the very first time anybody ever said that. And my guidance counselor put it in writing, I was not college material. And then Nick said, if you continue to work for me in these broad capacities you work for me, I'll pay for the first 2 years of tuition and books out at the 2-year campus in Sheboygan.
Wow.
And wow, that was a life changer for me. It absolutely changed my life. My parents were very unhappy because they thought the path was, going into a trade, and they first saw me having my own company and all this stuff, but that wasn't me for sure. And it, the work for Nick, I don't know how he saw in me what I didn't see in myself, but he had a very good gift for that. And I became very close to him, and he was like a father to me, all through my employment.
Wow.
That's a long story.
But a good one.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very large family. And I think them as a whole guided me. And I mean, there's things that we fought about and you hated 1 minute and the next day you're laughing together. And I just think they all influenced my life.
I was her favorite sister. A couple of women. One of them was our neighbor lady growing up. She was an artist. She painted, she sewed. She could take burdocks and make something gorgeous. I mean, she was just a true artist. And I always respected her and her ability to do that. And I always thought they were so rich because they had all these really cool things in their house. They were poor just like the rest of us, But, and then my mother too. My mother had this optimism that tomorrow's gonna be better. I don't know how she got out. I don't know how she did that. But she had a lot of faith. So I always respected her for that. And in a lot of respects, she was a leader. If you would have asked her, she wasn't, but because we were such a large family, you went in pairs. The older one took a younger one, so then the older one was a trainer, the younger one was learning. We didn't know any of that stuff. All this, team playing, but she taught us all that, and I don't think she realized what she was teaching us.
Can I ask how many kids were in your family?
14.
That is a big family.
And 2 were Down syndrome, and so your parents were role models with them.
Mm.
You just learned a lot from that experience.
A lot of different people went through my mind and got the Nicks. Not a good mentor, not a good, no, I don't remember that as being good. But two people that I named, two men, first one, they're both pastors and a child of God, also a Christian. And one is Pastor Timler, who was a long time retired, as a pastor, was in Rantoul. And what he taught me, I think, was this mild, calm, following of Christ and being content. That concept, just always had an answer of things and mild about it and non-condemning of things and just a great pastor. And the other one is a pastor, also my current pastor, Azor Sigelski in Holstein, who he had other jobs or whatever before he became a pastor and went to school. One was a sportscaster, and another, he was an English teacher, I think, or had all that background in literature. And he brought all that with him to, with his, I think, the deeper spiritual insight in the Word of God, where he just goes into it and pulls out all of this stuff and, pulls this book together with this book and that verse, and it's just like, I'm in awe every time I listen, most times when I listen to what his sermons are and stuff, so I think he's a great mentor in that regard.
I'll be honest, I struggled with this one. I don't know why exactly. I'm a middle child, so I think a lot of times we either did what the older one did or the younger one. So I didn't have a lot of confidence growing up either. So I put two teachers down. So Bill Steiner was an English teacher and I was his teacher aide, and we got pretty close. So I think he built up confidence. And then we also, Mark Schott was a math teacher, right? I did okay in math, but in order to go to college, I needed to get some tutoring, and he set aside time for, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 kids, and he taught us, and I think that's where I learned I was smart enough to go to college, because my parents told me I wasn't smart enough to go, so I went, and that's probably why I work so hard at work. And my whole life has always been a lot of work, where I struggle now with the identity of not working all the time. But yeah, so those are 2 people that came up, but then also my grandma. My family isn't very affectionate, but my grandma always was, so she probably taught us love, I guess.
I too struggled with it. And my first thought is, I don't think anybody influenced me, and I'll own it, I was probably not there emotionally and mindfully. I'm not sure what I was doing, but I was kind of there and probably playing defense for the world that was going on. But I appreciate it, because then I could put down some people and some names. I'll just share, because most of them are family, but we had a next door neighbor, Mrs. Bear, and she had kids from the neighborhood come into her basement of her house for Good News Club. And it was Bible stories on the felt board.
Oh,
And then we had to memorize scripture, and I got really good at that. I even went on to some kind of competition. I'll tell you, I'm not a memorizer, but somehow I got through, Bible verses. And then she had treats. But I just look at that gift that she gave to our whole neighborhood. Freely given.
Thank you for your stories. That's good to hear them.
Can we veer off the path a minute? I have a question.
Yeah.
When you talked about letting go of your children, and then a couple sentences later, you're talking about being their mentor and their counselor.
Right.
That's an awful fine line that you have to draw with your children sometimes, correct? How do you approach that?
Yes, that's something I'm exploring. I haven't found the answer yet, but it's something, that's one reason I'm doing this class, is to find that out.
So if you
As I
just,
let go of them, how can I still be there for them?
because in some respects, when you let go, I mean, you might lose some of your, they might lose some respect for you because you're cutting them off, but
Right?
you're not. But yet, so if they do that, how are they supposed to come to you if they've got issues and, you know?
Yeah.
So are you a mentor if you just listen?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's one of the most important skills, I think. You're right, very good, yeah. A lot of people thought I was a good doctor, and I wasn't that skilled of a clinician, but I was a pretty good listener, and I think that means so much to people, just to be able to tell their story and know that somebody's paying attention. So, yeah.
You don't get that nowadays with a doctor
No
or
way.
any kind of healthcare, I don't think,
No,
you know.
they don't have time.
they don't
They're
have
so
time.
busy.
I don't know, I talk
That
fishing
depends.
with my doctor.
So I've got a couple of assignments for you in the coming week. I'm gonna, at the end, I'm gonna give you this handout of stuff you can look up. And a lot of the handouts are about scientific basis for some of the things we're doing, proving that these things help, okay? But another thing that I explored this morning in this book, if you have the book, it's on page 50. Contemplate the question, am I an elder? If you are, then ask, in what ways do I function as an elder in my life? If you're not, why not? See if there's something you can do. And then write these words. So I want you to write these words down, and in the coming week, these are different stages in our life that we go through. So first stage is babyhood, write that down. Then childhood. Then the teenhood. And you know, these are not necessarily any definite ages. I think I went through my teen years into my 20s, so I don't even like that. Adulthood, parenthood, and finally elderhood. And then next to these words, write one or two adjectives that best describe the flavor of that time in your life, flavor. So, if you would work on that in the coming week, if you have this book, it's on page 50. To close tonight, I've got a story. That's from the Bible. One of my favorite stories, and it talks about the second half of life. And it's the story of Job. So it starts in this way. There was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and he employed many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. One day, the angels came to present themselves before God, and Satan, the accuser, came with them. "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. And Satan answered the Lord, "I have been going back and forth across the earth, watching everything that's going on." Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and will have nothing to do with evil." Satan replied to the Lord, "Yes, Job fears God, but not without good reason. You've always protected him and his home and his property from harm. You have made him prosperous in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." "All right, you may test him," the Lord said to Satan. "Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically." So, storms came, raiders came, he lost all his sheep, all his possessions. His children were all in one house, and the storm came and killed all of his children. And he remained faithful. And Satan came back to God and said, "Just let me do a little bit more." God said, "Okay." So he had boils all over his surface. And he was getting discouraged, and he had these friends who came to try to counsel him, and they were terrible. If you read the story, these friends were no help at all. And finally, Job didn't curse God, but he did question God. So they had a debate. Job and God had a debate. Job says, "I know you can do anything and no one can stop you. You ask, 'Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorance?' It is I, and I was talking about things I did not understand, things far too wonderful for me. You said, 'Listen and I will speak. I have some questions for you and you must answer them.'" Basically, God said to Job, "Listen, this is not ideal. I didn't promise you everything will be great. It's not. That's not how it works. It's not a contract we made that if you're good, everything will be blessed." And Job said, "Oh, I get it. I get it." And then Job prayed for his friends, and the Lord restored his fortunes. In fact, the Lord gave him twice as much as before. Then all his brothers, sisters, and former friends came and feasted with him in his home, and they consoled him. So the Lord blessed Job in the second half of his life, even more than in the beginning. The second half of his life. So we go through all these changes. It's not a deal we've made with life, with God. Things happen, but we can learn from them, and we can go on to be mentors be patient, be wise ourselves. Meditation is part of the answer. We'll gather again next week at 6 p.m. I appreciate you coming, and once again, if for some reason you can't come, you can watch it on the Chilton Library .org, YouTube, live stream, or anytime you want to, and stay in touch. And the couple of people who wanted to be in the class can still join. I think we can fit a couple more people in, so, and they can watch that. You can hang around for a bit afterward if you want. I'm gonna, if you need the handout that I emailed that kind of summarizes the class and has the list of books, there's some of those right here. And I'll hand out, or I'll have somebody hand out these handouts from week 1. And we'll close with a short sitting meditation. Just sitting here, feeling our body, sitting and breathing. And the thoughts come and let them go. Just notice the thoughts going by like clouds in the sky. And come back to the breath. Thanks for your practice.
Stick together.
I'll tell them you can stop the recording.
Marie.
You're counting that.
You're in the right place.
I have a feeling
Better.
I'll find you.
It will.
Good.
The library closes at 8 o'clock, so we can't hang around too long.
I'm just gonna scoot behind you. You're all good.